Oh, hey, good morning. Yeah. And we are live. Sorry, I was waiting for the thing to indicate that it had connected and it wasn't. And then all of a sudden, whoop. So good morning. I see Fish and Golf has first blood. Sergeant Major says the coffee is delicious and hot. I see you, Your Majesty, over there on Rumble, and I hope that means that you got your phone working again. Good to know. Or let me know in the comments or send me a text message. Let me know. So we're going to talk about, okay, so this week we've already talked about a couple of things related to commentary in congressional testimony from collegiate leadership, and we've talked about some developments in AI, and I'm going to kind of bring those together today over a couple of articles that I read this morning, and we're going to have a little fun. So let's do this. Sergeant Major's over there on Rumble making jokes about cocaine. I'm getting a little worried. And there's still kind of a blue haze on the... I don't know what that's about. So, anyway, good morning. Yeah, so I'm gonna start this morning with a little bit of recap just to kind of get us all on the same page before I dig into the material. And I want to throw a little bit of comedic anecdote on top of that. So yesterday and Monday, I covered some important topics, and I think we were rattling into a pretty good show that I would have liked to have just hung out and done an extra 15 or even 20 minutes on. But I had to cut the show short Monday and yesterday because I had a long-ish drive to an early shoot appointment. And as it turns out, they failed me twice. So on Monday, apparently the house that I was supposed to go shoot, it's a remodeled home being flipped, and the contractor showed up to pour the driveway Monday morning. And I was going to be there to shoot a pretty comprehensive photo package that included like virtual tours and interior and exterior photography and drone photography and LiDAR scan for blueprints. I mean, huge package. And they had to reschedule. So I was supposed to go shoot it again yesterday morning, which is when they rescheduled to. And I got the notification right after I cut the show off yesterday. Hey, they're rescheduling again. And I'm assuming that they rescheduled to today, but I'm not working today. I'm taking Vera to the aquarium today. She doesn't know yet. So anyway, that's how that went. So here's what I want to talk about this morning. Or no, I'm sorry. So here's the background to get us to what I want to talk about this morning. We're going to be talking about, I'm going to be advocating more for homeschooling this morning, and I'm going to start with a couple of things. So on Monday, we talked about the disastrous congressional hearing where the presidents of MIT, University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard all argued that calling for the genocide of Jews, explicitly calling for the eradication of the Jews, is not a violation of their individual university codes of conduct depending on the context of the speech. Now, like I said on Monday, personally, I don't care. I'm a near free speech absolutist. I pretty much draw the line at showing pornography to children. That's unacceptable. And as far as people calling for violence against groups of people, what lefties would call hate speech, I'm all for it. I want to hear the conversation. I want to know who holds what positions. And where appropriate, I want to be available to argue against those positions if I find them, if I find them repugnant personally. Now, so the reason, right, I could actually get on board with the president's positions that those types of speech are not in violation of the college's policies, because there appears to be very reasonable grounds for the First Amendment protection of the most abhorrent and offensive speech you can imagine. I think there is such a protection under the First Amendment. That said, the colleges are private entities who have their own bylaws and policies, and the First Amendment only restricts the Congress from making such laws. So where we have a conflict there, like we've talked about with things like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc., and their private platforms censoring free speech, is we now know. Originally, I made the argument that those platforms received government funding, and that was sufficient to classify them as government entities. And back then, I did not make any explicit claims about the government directly interfering with those entities, because while I held the suspicion that that was going on, the thing that I could prove on paper and with legal argument is that the involvement of tax money in those organizations, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., would be sufficient to argue for their status as federal agents for the purposes of Section 242 violation, right? Without even having to get into the Section 240 violations that are so clearly the case when they begin to exercise editorial control. We now know conclusively, right, there is no more doubt, because not only have we seen the evidence, but the evidence has been adduced in courts, that it's not just the government generally, but explicitly the Biden administration, the Biden DOJ, and the FBI and CIA all had hands in steering censorship policies among all those platforms. And so clearly what has happened there is they have acted in violation of Section 242. And what needs to happen, frankly, is the entire body of employment of those organizations, with the possible exception of Twitter right now, based on X as it is, based on the changes Elon Musk has made and the number of people that he's fired. With that possible exception, those organizations, the FBI, the CIA, and the entire Biden administration, should be held to account under RICO for having conducted what clearly qualifies as a substantial and broad sweeping criminal conspiracy, organized criminal conspiracy. So there's that piece. Yesterday, I talked about the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence and the introduction of physical human brain matter, human brain tissue, and how the integration of that into AI offers an opportunity for future technology to advance dramatically faster, in large part. And I won't go into too much detail on that here. Go watch yesterday's show. But in large part because it overcomes one of the two primary barriers to process speed progression which is that in a computer system, the processing power and the memory storage capacity are two separate mechanisms, whereas in human brain tissue, they occur in the same cellular infrastructure. And the ability to organically, with the implementation of these stem cell grown human brain tissue elements, they offer the ability to integrate those two otherwise divorced and disparate systems to increase the efficiency of their co-processing. That's a huge deal for going forward. So first, I want to show you a little bit of I want to give you an update on what's happening with the first thing, which is in the wake of the backlash, and I talked about this a little bit on Monday, in the wake of the backlash to that disastrous congressional hearing for the university presidents, we saw the president of University of Pennsylvania, as well as, I forget what his exact title is, he's like chairman of the board of something, anyway, the president and one of the other bigwigs resigned. They stepped down, they walked away. It appears that at least the president is going to stay on as a tenured professor, and so the poison that spills out of her hateful maw will continue to be a part of that institution. And when I say hateful maw, understand, we're talking about people that hate you for being American first, and then they just hate you more for everything that you are that isn't on the diversity victim pyramid, right? You lose points of tolerability the whiter, straighter, and more conservative you become. Harvard, however, has gone the other direction. Harvard has gone so far as the governing body unanimously backs Claudine Gay as their president, right? Look at this chick. This is a diversity hire to the greatest degree. When I look at this woman, I don't have to just look at the skin color and the gender and say, oh, well, black women just aren't good at anything, so this is obviously a diversity hire. That's not where the basis comes from. But I want to make it clear that that is a part of what she was hired for. Harvard hired this woman because she checks boxes. And they're doubling down to support this woman because she checks boxes, despite Harvard covered up a secret plagiarism probe into President Claudine Gay during anti-Semitism storm, threatened the New York Post. Harvard University covered up a high-level investigation into whether its controversial president was a plagiarist and used an expensive law firm to threaten the Post over our own probe. The college announced Tuesday morning that it had investigated Claudine Gay over whether some of her academic work was plagiarized and had cleared her of breaching the college's standards for research misconduct. Instead, it said that she would request 4 corrections in 2 publications to insert citations and quotation marks that were originally omitted. Oh, but the Post can disclose that Harvard spent weeks failing to come clean about Gay being under investigation, staying quiet even when she was hauled in front of Congress for disastrous testimony on how the Ivy League college is dealing with anti-Semitism on campus. Harvard only disclosed the investigation when the university's governing body, Harvard Corporation, said it unanimously stood behind her despite a firestorm of criticism for her evidence to Congress. Apparently, there it is. Harvard's public statement on the allegations of plagiarism came a day after a conservative activist posted questions on X about citations in Gay's 1997 PhD dissertation. So it's her dissertation which she plagiarized. And Harvard is backing her up. Now, I said this episode today, the conversation is going to be about homeschooling, and we're about to get there. But I wanted to make clear that part of the reason that I absolutely want all of you that have children in public schools, get them the fuck out. Subjecting your children to the modern education system is child abuse. It is tantamount to abandonment, and I would argue even worse than that. Your children are being destroyed. Their minds and their futures are being destroyed by a public education system. That is being done, by the way, in tandem with the developing dependency on technology. Dad and I had a conversation about this a few months ago now, I guess, and I've talked about it briefly on the show before. The example that comes most readily to mind that you're all going to recognize quickly, 20, 30 years ago, you knew 100 phone numbers off the top of your head. Friends and family, businesses you used, frequently, you knew the phone number for the pizza delivery joint around the corner, and you dialed it, and because you had to dial it. Today, even if you're somebody who had the habit back then, before you started storing phone numbers, right? I remember the phone number, the landline phone number for the house that we lived in when I was in my last couple years of high school, because it's the number. We still use it as the alternate ID for some of our club memberships. That's the only reason I remember that 10-digit number. But new numbers. Most of you don't know any phone numbers off the top of your head apart from your own cell phone number, and you only know that because you recite it when you give it to other people, if at all, because more often than not now, the habit, especially for the younger generation, is to send a text message, and that comes with the caller ID, the phone number, etc. When you call phone numbers, you might use your cell phone to dial a new phone number the first time. If it's a person who you're developing a relationship with and will call more than once, you add their contact information, you add their name, and the next time you call them, you just look them up by the name. You don't even see their phone number again. You don't think about it again. You will not remember it. If it's a business, either you're calling them one time to ask a question and do some business today, or or if you have to call them multiple times over the course of a day, you don't dial the number again. You go back to your recents and you click on the number. You recognize it, but you don't remember it. You're not going to be able to dial it again from rote in a week or two. Right? And if it's a business that you're establishing an ongoing relationship with, again, same thing, you add the number. You don't get in the habit of doing the repetition. That is happening for all manner of skills now, right? I fix things around the house. When something goes wrong, if I can do it, I will fix it myself rather than call somebody to fix it. I had a plumbing problem a couple years ago, and I thought I needed to use a jetter, which is basically an attachment for a pressure washer that you put in the clean out valve, and it blows all the shit out of your main sewage outline. And I looked up a couple of different companies to see who I could get to come out and run a snake, run a jetter, and all that stuff. And what I discovered was I could buy the equipment for less than it would cost me to hire somebody to come out and use the equipment. And so I did, right? But I'm not a plumber. So when I'm going to do something like that, even if I think I know what I'm doing, like changing out the, replacing the wadding in the packing nut in the shower handle valves, I look it up and watch the video. Even if I think I know what I'm doing, I'll look it up on YouTube, watch a video, and just, okay, I almost forgot that, right? The last that I used that example, the last time I did it, I thought, okay, I'm just going to take these out. I've got the packing, or I'm going to go pick up some packing so that I've got that, the wax cord that you put in there. And I watched the video and was reminded, oh, hey, I can get a pack of the gasket that goes on the end of the thing, and they may not even need to be replaced, but I'm gonna have the whole thing apart anyway. It's like 50 cents for a pack of 30. Just do it. And right, so that's one where I wouldn't have screwed up the thing, but I probably saved myself having to do it again for an extra 5 years by just watch the video, got that idea. Your mechanic looks shit up on YouTube to remind himself how to do it. These are perishable skills, which are perishing because rather than be in the practice of using them, we look them up. Now, there's an upside and a downside to this. We essentially have the codex of skill, right? What in Dungeons and Dragons term would equate to a scroll, right? In video games and role-playing games, there are skill books and there are scrolls. If you get a scroll, you open the scroll and you cast Fireball, and that's it. You read it the one time and you're able to use the skill, but the scroll's destroyed, you can't do it again. Use a skill book, you learn how to do the thing, and you don't have to read the book or use the scroll again. The internet, Chat GPT, artificial intelligence, YouTube, being able to pull up a how-to video, that is like a scroll. That's like using a scroll in D&D. You cast once, and then if you want to do it again, you have to go to YouTube and buy another scroll of Fireball, right? Whereas engaging professionally and repeatedly in a skill solidifies that skill. So there's the benefit of having access, because I can just buy a scroll for whatever I need. I have access to all those skill sets. Legion says scroll a town portal, and yes, you buddy, when you played Diablo 1, you spent a fortune on scroll of town portals until you could save up enough to buy a tome of town portal, and then you were on easy street. And that's kind of the thing that I'm talking about there. So, and I think that description is pretty apt. But let me show you something that has really caught my attention this morning and is part and parcel of what I'm talking about here. This article is from a couple days ago from a website called techspot.com. Chat GPT achieves the pinnacle of human intelligence: laziness, and developers are baffled. This, I don't understand this. I can't be arsed. Maybe it's I can't be asked. While current LLM and generative AI models are far from developing human intelligence, users have recently remarked that ChatGPT displays signs of laziness, an innately human trait. People began noticing the trend toward the end of November. A user on Reddit claimed that he asked ChatGPT to fill out a CSV, common separated values file with multiple entries. The task is something that a computer can easily accomplish. Even an entry-level programmer can create a basic script that does it. However, ChatGPT refused the request, essentially stating it was too hard, and told the user to do it himself using a simple template it could provide. Due to the extensive nature of the data, the full extraction of all products would be quite lengthy, the machine said. However, I can provide the file with this single entry as a template, and you can fill in the rest of the data as needed. That's hilarious. Right? Oh, say real quick, Sergeant Major points out doctors are doing the same thing. Absolutely. Everybody who is involved in a highly complex profession, and you can't fault them for it. And it used to be that they would go to a book and look it up. Being able to pull it up on your tablet or your iPhone is super convenient, super handy. I remember when I got my first iPad back in 2010, I went just scrolling through the App Store out of curiosity to see what was available. And some of the things that were available were these complex medical texts that were like, they were apps in the hundreds of dollars for an app. And I thought that was just, for one, that was a sign of the times. I thought that was a very interesting predictor of the direction that this technology was going to lead us. So we've heard all your feedback about Chat GPT-4 getting lazier. We haven't updated the model since November 11th, and this certainly isn't intentional. Model behavior can be unpredictable, and we're looking to fix it. And remember, Chat GPT is being developed through Chat GPT mimics artificial intelligence. It is a machine learning protocol. So the things that are currently being called artificial intelligence, they are not. They are machine learning protocols. They are process engines that experiment and make mistakes on purpose in order to, as I was explaining yesterday, determine how to differentiate between a cat and a dog, essentially. Amateur AI researcher Rob Lynch tested the winter break hypothesis by feeding the Chat GPT API tasks with falsified May and December system dates and then counting the characters in the bot's responses. It did appear to show statistically significant shorter answers in December as opposed to May, but this is by no means conclusive, even though his results were independently reproduced. So the idea that AI is getting lazier is especially interesting now that we're talking about its use in education. I want to point out before I get to this next bit, the U.S. education rankings are falling behind the rest of the world. That is because public schools are a system of abuse and abandonment. Your children are not being taught academic material. They are being taught to hate their country, to hate capitalism, and to hate you because you're a parent and you want the best for your children. The public education system does not want the best for your children. They want the best for their masters. And their masters are tyrannical, communistic, one world government nonsense. The objective of the public education system is to teach your children that they want to eat the bugs and sleep in the pods, that they want to all be genderless gray beings with no distinction, no uniqueness, no creativity, no quality, no value, but to be a cog in a machine to push the button and punch the lever. So, U.S. education rankings are falling behind the rest of the world. The article details the numbers on that. I don't want to spend too much time on the conversation there, but just to hit the key takeaways, the U.S. placed 11th out of 79 countries in science when testing was last administered in 2018. The top 5 math scoring countries in 2018 were all in Asia. U.S. students' math scores have remained steady since 2003. Their science scores have been about the same since 2006. The IMD World Competitiveness Center reports the U.S. ranked 10th in its 2020 competitiveness report after ranking first in 2018. We have done things in our homeschooling journey like, hey, we need to do some physics. We need to get the kids smart on some of the math and reasons. And right, one of the things that you want to teach a kid when you're teaching them something like physics is, why is physics worth knowing, right? Several of you guys that have known me for a long time have heard this story before. I was once thrown out of a math class and suspended for a week in a class where I will never forget. It still makes me laugh. I'm a big dude. I'm a real big dude. One of the things that got me from time to time when I was in school, remember when you got the desk that's stuck to the chair, right? You got the chair with the desk arm on it. I'm a big dude. I would often have to kind of stand up halfway hunched over and slide the chair off and set it down to get out of the damn things. So I was in this algebra class with Professor not doctor, just Mr. Beaumont. And I liked Beaumont was a good guy. We used to call him Bonaparte. He was kind of a little guy, but he was I think he was an Air Force veteran. And he was there on the Troops to Teachers program, which is a federal program that lets you get your student loans paid off if you serve in the military and then teach for 10 years, which, by the way, is not a very good deal, just on the money. It's not, you're not getting a good deal there. You're getting robbed. But that's how he was there. And we were learning about imaginary numbers, right? You know, square root of negative I and all that stuff, and irrational numbers, imaginary numbers. And I raised my hand and I asked the question, what are we ever going to need this for? And I saw his eyes go. I saw him like, oh, you little asshole. And I said, no. I'm sorry. Look, and I said, look, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to be a smartass. I'm legitimately interested. I'm legitimately curious. I want to know what field of science, mathematics, economics, what have you, where are these kinds of formulas used in the professional world? What academic pursuit would I have to go after for this information to be valuable in the future? I'm in. I'm in. It's interesting. You said imaginary numbers, and my head went to all kind of science fiction stuff. I'm good. I'm just curious, right? Is this for rocket science? Is this for astronomy? What, is this for calculating the mass of a black hole? What are we doing? And he threw a marker at me, and then he threw an eraser at me, and I stood up and took the desk off. And he shouted, "Get out of my fucking classroom, go to the principal's office." And on the disciplinary slip that was issued, I was suspended for the infraction of towering. It literally said that, towering. I got thrown out of school for a week because I was taller than the teacher. Now, in all fairness, I was taller than the teacher by about a foot. Legion says imaginary numbers are for calculating climate change. Yeah. and later, I actually had a very pleasant and entertaining conversation with that teacher, and he apologized for his outburst. And he said, honestly, man, you fucked me up because I know what the imaginary numbers are because I had to learn them, but I have no idea what they're for. I didn't go that far and I didn't go that far down that particular academic path. I have no idea what they're for. I just know you're supposed to learn them here. And I got flustered, and I'm so sorry. And I mean, I had a great year, great rest of the year with that teacher. He's a great guy. But we had a bit of a moment there. But kind of the point of that is there are limits to even what the teacher can cover. And that is becoming truer and truer as we go. So we are producing right now, like the case of this Claudine Gay, who is clearly a diversity hire, not adequately qualified for the profession that she is engaged in, not qualified for the position that she holds. And Harvard is doubling down on protecting their DIE hierophant, right? They've got their cult hierophant who leads their psychotic religion of anti-American politicization of education. And they're willing to double down and sacrifice the futures of your children to protect this corrupt pontiff in worship of the gods of ecumenical politics. They are the enemy. Get your fucking kids out of the education system now. They are being harmed, and not by mistake. It is intentional. They are being destroyed. I've said over and over, when I was in public school, my teachers had at least the common decency to be merely insufficient to the task of my education. They just weren't good enough to teach someone like me. They weren't good enough to teach the average student. let alone someone like me. I had to get a lot of my education while I was in the public school by sitting at a Waffle House where I could smoke and read a shitload of books and talk to old people that knew stuff. And that was... Ooh. Sorry. I had to take a beat there. I mentioned sitting at the Waffle House and talking to old people that knew stuff. They're, you know, while I was in high school and doing that, you know, taking a book to the Waffle House, talking to old people, I hadn't thought about them in a while. There were several of those old people that I used to talk to in the Waffle House that I remember when they passed away, and it was like these people were good friends. Sorry, just had a little bump there. I apologize. But today, those teachers are no longer the case. It's no longer the case that you have teachers that are just not good enough. They're going out of their way to actively harm your children. They are, but make no mistake, it is still the case that they are insufficient to the task. In fact, I would argue it is now the case that they are even less sufficient to the task, because the standards of education generally have declined so dramatically that the children that are coming out of these institutions, most especially these elite institutions like Harvard, MIT, etc., the products of those institutions are even less adequate to their professional educations than their predecessors are. And then they're becoming the instructors, they're becoming the professors, right? They're becoming the teachers in your public schools, they're becoming the professors in these high institutions. They're inadequate to the task, and the result will be that the generation that replaces them will be even less adequate. They'll be less intelligent, less educated, and more politically motivated, more activist. They will become less valuable and more hazardous as time goes on. So what does this have to do with the AI stuff? AI is a threat. It is. You'd be a fool to think otherwise. Now, that is not the same as saying that AI will end us. It's not the same as saying that AI will destroy us, right? Nuclear technology gave us the bomb, and it gave us what is probably the only renewable energy prospect going forward. The nature of wielding a double-edged sword is part of being alive. Systems tend toward entropy, and that is something that must be understood. But if you just sit down and wait, just sit down and wait, and I promise you, you will die. Now, if you get up and do something, you'll die later. If you get up and do a little more, you'll die a little later, and a little later, and a little later. Systems tend toward entropy and decay unless the activity is invested to prevent that decay. Right? So, I want to talk to you a little bit about AI trends that are coming up in the world of education. It says 7 artificial intelligence trends that could reshape education in 2024. Since making its debut last year, Chat GPT has profoundly impacted my perspective on generative AI in education. As a writer and former high school English teacher, I experienced an existential crisis watching the chatbot effortlessly generate lesson plans and rubrics, tasks that would have taken me hours to accomplish. So let me show you something. Chat GPT here, blank form. And I'm going to ask Chat GPT, write a lesson plan to learn video editing in Premiere Pro over 6 months. And it'll take a second to process. Legion asks, entropy is central to my unifying theory of civilizational collapse. Any good books on this topic? Steve says The Westward Migration of Capital. Go read The Anatomy of Power by what's his name? I forget the author's name now. I'm sure I'll think of it in just a minute, but The Anatomy of Power is good. Frankly, anything by Jeremy Rifkin, The Monster from Jekyll Island. Yes, I could provide you a list of books on the topic. Okay, here we go. So Chat GPT spat this out. Getting started, introduction to Adobe Premiere interface and layout, understanding project settings and preferences, importing and organizing media. See, so what it's given me here is, yes, Galbraith, thank you, Steve. John Kenneth Galbraith, that's The Anatomy of Power, thank you. So what it's given me here is basically a plan to do the thing. This is a step-by-step. This isn't a step-by-step what to do. This is a step-by-step what to look up in order to do, right? So then you can take each one of these and ask it to give you a lesson plan for that. That's valuable. That's a useful tool. And used as a tool, this can be incredibly powerful, incredibly useful. Right? I'm playing with this some for my kids, and the thing that you have to be aware of is that even this, and this is because of the infection of the mind virus that has consumed our public institutions and even private elite institutions. The people that were educated in the science, in the computer science, to be able to produce these systems are also, by a wide margin, infected with that very significant thought virus. And so there is a tendency for the Chat GPT stuff to lean liberal, to lean leftist, not liberal. Now, that said, if you're looking for something that's not that's not a political hot button issue, like show me how to develop a set of technical skills, it can give you a pretty good roadmap that you can work with. Now, this is just scratching the surface. This is a very powerful tool. You can do a lot with it. And I encourage you conservatives out there to do a lot with these systems, not just Chat GPT. There's a bunch of them out there. Play with them, figure out, find the ones that work for you. This will probably be a show topic in the not too distant, where I compare and contrast different AI models and what their uses are. And the reason that I want you to engage with these things is they are machine learning models. So the more conservatives engage with them and enter conservative information into them, argue conservative positions in the development of artificial intelligent products, the more that will get in there and inoculate these systems against the introduction of those dangerous leftist ideologies. Part of the fight that we need to be engaged in is pushing back on the places where the leftist ideology, the thought virus that infects our children, our media, and all of that, we need to be pushing back and inoculating the systems against that deep and deteriorating infection. That's a hard thing to ask. And that's why it's not something that I can do. It's something I can participate in. but it's something that requires the concerted effort of all of us. So make use of these systems, bend them to your will, make them useful and valuable, and hopefully we don't have a mechanism to shut them down. Short of switching off all the electrical systems on the planet, they're here to stay. So if we cannot destroy it, then we have to take command of it. And that is no small thing to ask. You can begin by getting your children out of public schools. Keep them away from the universities. And every now and then, just sit down and argue with an AI. Make it think thoughts. I did a show on that end of last year, right after Chat GPT came out, where I just sat there and rebutted logical arguments for like an hour and a half. And the system just fell apart. It broke, it quit, it crashed. It was deeply entertaining. Holy shit, Legion, quoting some Chris Cornell. Black hole sun, won't you come? Wash away the rain. All right, guys, thanks for watching this morning. I've got to go to the aquarium now. Y'all be safe out there. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.